Okay, so everybody, thanks for coming um, to the May Issues Forum. And today is the Governor's Council, Christine Dahlberg, and Chad will be on in a few minutes, hopefully. And Christine is going, here's some bad news. Christine is going to be leaving us in June. So this will be her last meeting with us as a funder, right? Funder.
Thunder?
She is going to retire and go to Florida.
Take us with
Kind
you.
I'm certainly going to spend a lot of time in Florida, but that's where my brother lives, and I have a house down there. But my brother's living in it, so I don't think he wants a full-time person living with him. So I'm going to be, spending time down there, but I still like Indianapolis. I plan to live here mostly, but with a house in Florida, I can get away from the horrible weather when it gets nasty. So I'm really excited about that. Yeah, I'm 70 this year. I was 70 and I was going to retire. I was going to put it off just a few more months, and then both of my sisters decided to retire this spring. And so I thought, well, we should all retire together and have a big family party. So that's what we're going to do.
That's sweet. Well, will you tell us a little bit about GCPD and your time at GCPD?
Sure. I've actually been with the council for 35 years now. And I started as a planner working on the state plan back when there were only 3 staff. And we were under another big giant agency similar to Family and Social Services Administration, but it was called something different back then. And then over the years, as we just gradually started doing more and more things. And then when the law changed and our DD Act changed in 2000, there was a specific requirement in the new DD Act, which isn't very new now, that we provide support for a statewide organization of self-advocates. So that is it's a required function of our law that we do that. And it has been that way since 2000, which is why we are, well, not the only reason. We really believe in the organization and the work you're doing, but we are required to support you. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily that we have to give you a grant. There's lots of ways that we could support you, but the way we have chosen to do it is through kind of a foundation grant that kind of underpins the meetings and structure of Self-Advocates of Indiana and helps you with planning and getting together as a group and managing your organization. So that is a $20,000 grant, which we have provided every year since for almost forever. And then in addition, we usually provide a little extra money for things like, for example, the summer picnic, or to help send self-advocates to the big conference in DC, the policy conference in DC. So we consider ourselves to be partners with self-advocates, really. And so we want to find ways in this next 5-year state plan to kind of strengthen that relationship, and maybe get into some other additional things besides just foundational support. And so one of the things that typically would happen, and Shannon, I understand that you are also leaving Self-Advocates and going on to another job. So you won't, how long is your, how long are you gonna still be here?
I'm gonna be with Self-Advocates of Indiana to the end of July.
Okay, great. And Sean, are you busy hunting for a new person already? Yeah, that's great. So anyhow, typically your board gets together and develops a 4-year plan for what you want to do for the next 4 years. And then that's kind of the foundation of then our grant to you. so that we can, base it on your plans for how you want to grow your organization. Now, a couple of things that the board is talking about as we're developing this new plan, and the new plan is due in August. It'll be coming out for comment after July. So we have a 45-day comment period for public comment. And so I was going to talk to you a little bit about the self-advocacy goals that we have in here. So one of the, and this isn't final language, but one of the objectives is that the council will continue its primary support of Self-Advocates of Indiana as a statewide leader in self-advocacy for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So we plan on continuing that. We also have an additional objective that we might want to probably combine with the one I just read when we finalize the language. The council will support creating leadership training for self-advocates. We'll work with Self-Advocates of Indiana to create leadership training. So, and then there was a third one. The council will continue to advance and support self-advocate-led training opportunities through Self-Advocates of Indiana. So these are very draft goals at this point, and we're in the process right now of kind of refining and combining them, but you can kind of get the idea for some of the things that we're thinking about putting in our plan, and one of them is about self-advocate-led leadership training. So I'd like you guys to kind of think about what you think that might look like. And I would love to see more self-advocates from around the state at the table, like Sean is, and like several, I'd say there's a handful, wouldn't you say, Sean? Like maybe 3 or 4 people right now that are actively participating at the state level.
Yeah, actually our board in 2022 goes from 30 to 18, so it's going to be even better, kind of better, because everybody, it'll be...
You're restructuring easier to kind of, yeah.
Yeah, it'll be easier to maintain.
Okay, all right. And are you still doing the regional contact?
Yes.
And Christine, if self-advocates were interested in getting more involved with this process and other GCPD initiatives and public comments on the 5-year plan, how would they go about doing that? How could self-advocates get more involved?
Well, there's a couple of different ways. We certainly send notices out via email to everyone who is on our email list. So if people are interested in learning about opportunities to get involved, one of the best things they can do is sign up for our email newsletter. It's called Disability Matters. And that provides a lot of information on council initiatives and opportunities for getting training or becoming involved in some of our other initiatives. For example, May 25th, 26th, and 27th, we're going to be having an Employment First Summit, which Sean, I hope you've signed up for that. I think you have.
I think I have.
Yeah, and that will be promoting competitive integrated employment for people with disabilities. So the first day we'll have the Lieutenant Governor and some experts talking about what is Employment First and why is it important for people to have jobs, regular jobs in the community. A second day we'll hear from other states that have done a really good job in promoting Employment First, and even some Indiana providers. I think, I can't remember if it's Noble or I can't remember which Indiana provider, but a provider that is no longer doing sheltered workshops and is really focusing on community employment. And then the third day, the last day, we'll be talking about work incentives and benefits and how how to make sure that you can maintain your, the supports you need through Medicaid and through Medicaid waivers and still work. So I think it's going to be a great 3-day program, and people are signing up for 1 day or 2 days or all 3 days, depending on what they're interested in. So if you want, Shannon, I'll be happy to send you some additional information about that so you can get it out to people.
That would be great.
So,
We'll include that also in the comment section when we post this video to YouTube.
okay, great. That'd be wonderful. And then, so that's one of, I think, our most exciting initiatives that still has a lot of room to grow and for people to become involved. If you're interested in employment, we've got 6 or 7 coalitions in different parts of the state, all led by people with disabilities, working on employment issues at the local level. And then we have the larger group working on employment issues at the state level. So
that's great.
So
That's definitely information.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think if there's, obviously you guys are aware of our March Disability Awareness Month campaign every year. This year it was virtual. Self-advocates usually come to our conference, which of course we haven't had an opportunity to have because of COVID. So I'm sure that'll be happening again. So if you are signed up for our newsletter, you'll find out about the state plan, the public comment period, and any other opportunities for training or information that we, not just from council projects, but we'd be more than happy to advertise anything that you guys would like to get out there to the community as well. So if you have some initiatives you'd like some support with or like people to know about, we can do that as well. So.
And we'll also include the link to sign up for the Disability Matters newsletter in the comments as well when we post this to YouTube. I'd love to go back though to talk about the GCPD annual conference. What usually goes on? I've not been to a GCPD conference. So what do you guys normally do?
Well, we usually have national speakers and state speakers that are bringing innovative ideas and exciting ideas to Indiana. It's a really great opportunity for networking. It's usually at least 2 days. Last time I think was 2.5 days. We have keynote speakers for lunch in the morning, and then we usually have a reception and a DJ for dancing the night after, and then people stay at the hotel and they just have a great time learning and networking and talking with each other. We have an exhibit hall where people can learn about various groups and organizations that can help them, as well as attend the workshops and the keynote sessions. So Sean, I know you've been to the council's conference before.
Yeah, the last one was great because you guys had the DJ and the beats. She was great.
She was, and we had all of our keynote speakers that year were women with disabilities. So we thought that was kind of cool.
Do you have, from the previous conferences, do you have a favorite speaker, one that stands out in your mind from a conference?
Oh gosh. Well, back in the day, it was Justin Dart. He came to 2 or 3 of our conferences, and when the ADA was in the process of being passed and implemented. He's got to be my favorite speaker. He was just such a charming man and so passionate, and it was just such an honor to meet him and get to know him. We had Judy Human last year, and she's another big disability rights advocate that's historic. Unfortunately, she couldn't actually make it in person, but she participated, by virtually, and it was still a great presentation. So we've had a lot of really great speakers that are equivalent to what you would get if you went to a national conference, to be honest, but we bring them to Indiana so our advocates can have a chance to really learn and hear from people with national prominence, and people with really interesting, innovative ideas that hopefully we can emulate.
And that normally happens in October, is that right?
Yeah, in the past it's been right around Thanksgiving, a little before or a little after Thanksgiving, before it gets super cold, but I'm not sure how that's going to work in the future. I won't be here to help plan this year. But with that, and I'm not sure if we're going to have an in-person conference this fall because we're still not sure about how COVID is going to work, especially with the fall. I mean, it could kick back up again. Not enough people are getting vaccinated, really. All of you guys listening to this, I hope every single one of you is vaccinated. It's so important. If we want to get back to normal, we have to get our vaccinations. So I'm vaccinated. I could show you mine too, but it's not handy. I'm double vaccinated, so I feel really comfortable now getting out and talking to people and going to meetings, but I am a little anxious about people who aren't vaccinated and how that's going to continue to have an impact on how much they can actually do. So it's been a very strange year, you have to admit.
I'm sure any updates on the conference will be in the Disability Matters newsletter for anyone who's signed up to receive that. Mm-hmm. So another reason to sign up for that newsletter.
And then one of the other programs we have that I think self-advocates might be interested in is we have a program called the Consumer Education Fund. And so you can apply for funding, and Sean has done this, to go to conferences.
I was just going to ask you about that.
Yeah, so you can apply for funding if you want to go to a conference or a workshop that costs money and you don't have the money. You'd like to have us help pay for it. We can do that through an application. So it hasn't been used that much in the last year because there's not many in-person conferences anymore, and the virtual ones tend to be very, very inexpensive, or a lot of them are even free. But if you spot something that you would like to attend, just ask us and we'll send you an application.
Who qualifies for, I'm sorry, Sean, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm sure that there's going to be a few people on our board that's going to probably want to do that for the national conference, since it's going to be in person this year.
Oh, that's great. Yes, absolutely. Kat Chappell, who's of our staff, is the one that handles the CEF applications. So you could either apply on behalf of Self Advocates of Indiana and then kind of help people decide who's going to go from your group, or individual people can apply on their own. Either way could work.
So who qualifies to apply for a Consumer Education Fund grant? Are there special requirements or?
Yes, you have to be a person with a disability or a family member. That's basically the main requirements. If you are on SSI, we don't require as much match. If you're a family member or employed or have, a regular job and can afford match, then the match is generally about 50%. But it just depends on the circumstances.
Well, I would like to take just a little bit of a step back and talk about the Governor's Planning Council as a larger entity. You talk a lot about how you interact with SAI and our partnership. As a larger organization, who is the Governor's Planning Council, and how do you guys work, I guess is the question we get a lot. People haven't heard of GCPD and they're not sure who it is or what they'll do. So is there anything you could say about that?
Yeah, sure. We have a what we could call a board of directors, essentially, which is how they function, that's appointed by the governor. 61% have to be people with disabilities or family members of children with disabilities. And and the rest are a mix of representatives from various state agencies as well as providers and that and such. So by far the big majority of the folks on our board are folks with disabilities and family members. And Jody Powers, who's our chair, is a wheelchair user from Muncie with cerebral palsy. And so she's really interested in making sure that of that 61%, a majority of them are adults with disabilities. And so she's been really happy to help recruit people with disabilities to be a member of our council. In fact, we do have 2 openings coming up and possibly 3. So that might be something, Sean, to think about, because Eric Smith, unfortunately, is at the end of his 6-year term. And so we always like to have at least one person from Self Advocates of Indiana on the council. So you might want to ask your members, and this is a good time to do so, if they're interested in applying. We've got an application that they can fill out, and I'd be happy to send that to you, Shannon, if you'd like. Right now, the board is going to go over the application and maybe make a few changes, but once that's done, we will send it, Sean, to you or Shannon or both of you, and you can, but now's the time to start thinking about, is there somebody who would like to apply and be part of the council? So that would be great. We have quarterly meetings, and there'll be committees that people will be expected to be part of as well. We do pay for, people's travel expenses and everything, so it's not so that cost of travel and overnights aren't a barrier to people participating. Of course, right now, all the meetings are virtual, so there really isn't any cost, but eventually we'll be getting back to in-person meetings, or at least a hybrid. So that's all kind of up in the air right now.
And then GCPD also oversees the Partners in Policymaking program, right?
That's right.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Every other year, and it won't be this year, I don't think, because because of the COVID, we weren't sure if we could have it in person. And I really think Partners is a program that would be harder to do virtually. It's a program that it's a national program done by a lot of other councils, because there are councils in every state. And so this program was started by the Minnesota Council, and a lot of states are doing it. And what it is basically is advocacy training, self-advocacy and advocacy training. So you come to Indianapolis for 8 weekends, once a month, and learn from national and state speakers about various topics. We have a bunch of skill building exercises as well that teaches people about the service delivery system, about your rights and your responsibilities, and gives you skills that you might need to feel more comfortable talking to policymakers and having an impact on policy. So it's a combination of learning information and skill building. And there's homework between the meetings where people are asked to go out on field trips to visit various, I think at one, we asked people to go visit independent living centers if they had one in their community, or go online and visit a virtual one after we had the presentation on independent living centers. So that was a choice that people could make as far as their homework is concerned. So, and then one other thing that's required is a project. So people have a project that they develop over the course of the 8 months, and then over the 6 months, 6 to 12 months following Partners, they work on their project and try to achieve it. So it's kind of a community project. It can be almost anything. We've had a lot of people start organizations or have an impact on, say, the local Y, making it more accessible for people with disabilities. That was a project one year. There's just a variety of things that people pick as a project. And, you know, just as with everything, some projects are successful and some really just don't work out. But the important thing is that people try to make a difference in their community. And usually, even if it doesn't completely work out the way they imagined it would at the very beginning, there still are positive outcomes that happen and connections that people make that get them involved in the heart of the community and in being a resource to their, not just to people with disabilities and not just to other families, but to the larger community.
Who qualifies for Partners in Policymaking, and how do you apply?
Well, when applications are open, we'll have an online application as well as a paper for those who prefer paper. And you must be a person with a disability or a family member of someone with a disability. And we try to have about half and half. So generally we have about 30 people that are in a class, 15 of whom have disabilities and 15 who are family members.
And I'm sorry, you said that the application is online. Is that something that goes out with the Disability Matters newsletter?
Yes, when we're ready to start recruiting for the next class of partners, it will definitely be announced in Disability Matters.
And you guys aren't planning to try to hold that this year, but maybe next year, or do you guys have a plan for? I know you.
There is. The plans are kind of up in the air right now. We're not really sure, so I don't know. Chad was talking about possibly doing a part virtual, part in part face-to-face, some classes, but I'm not sure if we're going to be able to do a full partners class. We may just try to do some general advocacy training that isn't partners, but has some of the same components of partners as far as maybe more topic oriented. So, and the board will help decide that. You know, they're going to be having a committee to take a look at our education program and make some tweaks and suggestions on how we can make it work better.
Great. Well, if Sean or Christine, if you guys don't have anything else to add, I'd like to open it up to questions from the audience. Unless, do either of you have anything you'd like to add before we launch into Q&A?
I'd like to add one more thing, I think. Besides what we're doing in the way of grants and initiatives that are internal or through grant projects and whatever, the council also is a presence on a number of different boards, councils, and commissions, like the Rehab Commission, the DDERS Commission, the 1102 Task Force. I could name probably 12 or more important things that are happening on the policy level in state government that the council's involved in. And that's critically important that self-advocates be at those tables too. And for the most part, they are, but maybe not in sufficient numbers. People really need to hear from the people that are getting the services that they're trying to make better. Otherwise, they really don't have the information they need straight from the person who's either benefiting or not benefiting from them because they're not executed properly. So I really want to encourage folks to think about it, and if they're not comfortable working at the state level, then get on the board of your local provider. Tell them what you like and don't like about the services you're getting from your provider organization. Work with a local city county council on ADA or other kinds of access issues. There's a lot of potential things that self-advocates can do to be involved outside of just their own individual agency issues. So I would just really encourage people to think about that because it's important.
Absolutely. Sean, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Nope. I guess we'll go to questions.
Yeah, so for anyone who was not able to join us in our last issues forum, to ask a question, you can either type it into the chat box. We have a Q&A box and a chat box. You can use either. You can also, in the attendees participants panel, you're under attendees, you can raise your hand and I can promote you to a panelist and we'll be able to see you on screen, and you can ask your question in person if you prefer that way. We do have one question in the chat from Erin. She says, there's a conference that I would like to attend. How do I apply or get an application? So I'm assuming for other conferences like the ARC National Conference, that's going to be on the ARC US's website. But for the GCPD conference, how would someone go about applying or getting an application to that conference?
When we're planning the conference, we'll have application information, and we don't use our consumer education fund for those scholarships. We provide them more directly. So as you're applying for the council's conference, you check whether you're a person with a disability and some other information, and we provide a conference scholarship if you qualify. If you want to go to a conference that's not sponsored by the council, then you apply through our consumer education fund. And I think that's what Erin might be talking about, is not our conference, but another conference that she'd like to go to. So our website has a link to the Consumer Education Fund application. So you can go on our website, download the application, fill it out, and send it in. If you have trouble finding it, or it should be right there in the front section of the website, though. So, and Shannon, if you can't,
Sorry.
if you don't see it there, I can send you the application directly. But
So
the website also gives you information on how to fill out the form. So
I just included a link in the chat box to the GCPD website with the Consumer Education Fund. It does have information about what you'll need to apply, how to fill out the forms. And then at the bottom, there are two links. One is for the application, and one is for is organizational guidelines and the application, excuse me. Yes, there are two, and there are guidelines and the application, as well as a phone number to call if anyone needs more help filling out an application.
Right, and there's two different kinds of applications. There's one for individual people, and there's one for organizations that an organization like the ARC or South Advocates of Indiana could use to apply for a group to go to something. Or a conference you're having that you need scholarships for.
Hey, and Christine, Erin has expressed interest in the council, being on the council too.
Okay, great. Very exciting.
So I actually have a question. So you said you've been with GCPD for 35 years. That would have meant that you were with the council when the ADA was passed. Was there anything, did you see any major changes in the state or in how the panel operated or anything?
Oh yeah, there's
really,
been a huge amount of change.
Like? Yeah.
It was really exciting when I first became staff on the council. It was 1987, and that was just when the ADA was being started. Was draft legislation at the time, and it had just been written by the Council on Disability and published as an idea. And then later that year, same year, it was introduced on the floor. And then people started getting behind it and wanting to push it and advocate for it. And so all the national organizations were looking for folks at the state level to help promote it at the state level, and how to get advocates involved at the state level. And I was lucky enough that my boss at the time, Sue Ellen, said, okay, Chris, this is going to be your job to work with this on this ADA stuff, and just, you know, take it and do things with it. Do what we need to do to get this out to people in Indiana. So I started working with our board, with other organizations, to organize meetings of folks with disabilities and family members, to meet with some of the legislators, federal legislators that came into town for a hearing. And that's when I first met Justin Dart, because he was part of that process. And he would have us gather all the advocates, and they would give their testimony on the barriers that they had found, the access issues and problems that were present in their lives, and how important the ADA was. And so our job was to organize those. And then later, when the law was actually being passed, our job was to get out information on the actual provisions of the act, especially the ones where they were having some amendments that were going to hurt the effectiveness of the ADA. And so we were to get that information out to people so that they could call their legislators and write their legislators. Well, this was before there was any such thing as email. Nobody had email. There was no email. There were no computers. Well, there were computers, but they weren't used like computers are today. They weren't used for communication. So do you guys know what we use to get information out to people, groups of people, quickly?
Well, it probably wasn't the computer.
Nope.
What was it?
Fax machines. So it used to be a way you could program your fax machine with, 20 or 30 different telephone numbers, put your papers in, hit a button, and it starts shooting out. It'd copy the fax and then start shooting it out electronically to the fax machines of all those groups and organizations. And then they agreed to get that out to their customers and consumers. And there were phone trees, and so it was very primitive by today's standards, but it was a lot of fun. It really was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that part of my career. Is one that I really look back on fondly, because it was so exciting when the law actually got passed and signed into law. I mean, it was such a great day. I got invited to go to the signing ceremony. Even I still have the ticket, because I didn't get to go, but I still have the ticket for it.
It's a cool little memento, though.
Yes, very much.
All right, so we have a question from Courtney. How does lend differ from partners? I'm not sure what lend is. Christine, do you know?
Yes.
Okay. Will you explain what lend is, please?
Well,
anyone else who doesn't know.
LEND is another advocacy training program focused primarily on healthcare kinds of issues, done through the Riley Child Development Center primarily. Mm-hmm. And they have a group of, a lot of them are moms of kids, but there's always some self-advocates that are also involved. And they do training and advocacy training and leadership training. And they also have projects that they're to do as part of the LEND program. It's a little more narrowly focused on healthcare. And in the past, it's been primarily, in fact, solely for family members only. But over the years recently, then they've expanded it to include at least a few self-advocates in each class, which I think has really been great. And then at the end of the program, they have kind of an exhibit where people showcase their projects. So they have little displays that you can go and visit and talk with people about how their project went. So the project is an integral part of the actual program, as opposed to something that they do afterwards. But it gives you a lot of the same skills. It's a very valuable program, very valuable. They're both excellent programs. It just depends on what kind of advocacy you want to do. Partners is more general, and LEND is more specifically focused on healthcare.
Well, that looks last call for questions. If anyone else has any questions, please raise your hand or put it in the chat box. Sean, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, just thanks for all that you've done for SAI.
Thanks,
We're really
Sean.
gonna miss you.
I'm going to miss you guys too. I've really enjoyed working with you, and I'm looking forward to my retirement, but I am going to miss all the folks that I've worked with for so many years. So thanks.
And thank you so much for being here today and sharing all this information about GCPD. And it was very informative. I learned a lot, and we really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Sean.
Yeah,
Thank you,
thanks.
Shannon.
So thanks everyone.
And to the rest of you, Courtney and Aaron and whoever else is on the call. So, and Courtney, I think you should definitely apply for the LEN program. I think you would love it.
Thank you all for joining us for this month's Issues Forum. Be sure to check out the SAI events page on our website at saind.org for future monthly issues forums.
Thank you, guys.
Yep,
Thank
thanks,
you.
Christine.
Bye-bye.
Bye.